Shalom, family. Good to see you all here. I hope you're doing well. Boy, I tell you what, the wind is blowing so hard here, you can hear the windows rattle. We've been having high winds all day, and this is supposed to go on all day tomorrow, too. This wind is fierce. So, anyway, y'all, Donald Trump has blocked prominent members of the EU from coming to America. They are banned. Now, I know we've been looking at him ban brown and black countries, Africa, the Caribbean, and Latin America, and, places in the Arab world, primarily, brown and black people. Well, now he's getting around to the pale people that look like him. So these folks that are getting banned are the ones that don't see eye to eye with Donald Trump. And you know how Donald Trump is. You don't agree with Donald Trump. Donald Trump think you're scum if you don't agree with him. So that's why they have gotten banned. And of course, they are shocked. Now, whether they will retaliate or not, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, just to see that he is banning some Europeans, that is shocking. But then again, Donald Trump don't get along with anyone. The Europeans for a long time were allies of the US, but since Donald Trump is the sitting president, he ain't no ally. I think the only one he halfway get along with is the UK and Israel. All right. And Russia, really Putin is clowning his behind. I don't really think Putin cares for him, but he knows Donald Trump is easy to manipulate. But other than that, Donald Trump don't communicate with no one well. He never has, and he never will. So anyway, y'all, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Let's see, hold on one second. Yeah. Okay, please give me a one if you can see my screen. Give me a one if you can see my screen. Thank you.
Breaking news: the Trump administration is barring 5 prominent Europeans from the United States, accusing them of being involved in online censorship of Americans. This comes after the European Union imposed its first penalty under the Digital Services Act, leveling a $140 million fine against Twitter. And they did so because of practices that misled users, obscured advertisers, and denied researchers access to internal practices, and not, as Elon Musk claimed, for refusing to censor content.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio barred several people closely associated with the European censorship efforts from traveling to the United States. In a post on X, Rubio accused these leaders of pressuring U.S. tech platforms over content moderation, writing in part, "The Trump administration will no longer tolerate these egregious acts of extraterritorial censorship." Jonathan Turley is writing about this. He's a Fox News contributor and a George Washington University law professor, and joins us now. So great to see you this morning, Professor. You've always been a clarion voice on this issue. And I think it's always important to start every one of these conversations reminding people that what we're talking about here with these censorship issues, efforts, is a government seeking to deploy government-approved speech.
That's right. And, with Secretary Rubio, Vice President Vance, President Trump have been outstanding. This is the first administration that is finally joining this fight and saying that they are not going to be passive as the EU establishes standards for free speech for Americans and American companies. In my forthcoming book, The Rage and the Republic, I talk about challenges to the American democracy in the 21st century. One of the greatest challenges is this global governance system, and specifically the EU. That is, the EU is exporting these standards. It's saying that it can censor Americans and American companies according to their own standards. Some anti-free speech figures like Hillary Clinton went to the Europeans when Musk bought X and said, you force them to restore censorship. There have been Americans that have been over in Europe encouraging this. And one of the 5 individuals that has been sanctioned is talked about in my book. And Thierry Breton is an infamous figure. He was one of the key figures in creating this EU censorship system. And Charlie, the thing that I warn about in the book is that the EU is an incrementalist institution. They've always understood that people would cling to their national identity. But many people in the EU view nationalism as a dangerous relic.
Right.
And so throughout its history, it has moved slowly to get people to yield more and more of their national identity and national laws. This is an existential fight for the United States.
So here's the other big story of the week that's getting lost in all the chaos around the Trump DOJ's disastrous handling of the Epstein files. And it's a really big one, so I want to make sure we're covering it. The Trump administration yesterday imposed the visa sanctions on various European officials and leaders of anti-disinformation groups, accusing them of censoring American speech. And it's really all because the EU levied a £120 million fine on Elon Musk's X, formerly Twitter, for violating EU law around disinformation and deceptive advertising practices. So now the full weight of the US government is attacking the EU as reinforcements for the richest man on the planet, as if we needed any other proof that we live in an oligarchy. Secretary of State Marco Rubio claims that these individuals who were sanctioned pressured US tech platforms to suppress viewpoints they oppose, a charge that European leaders are calling absurd and authoritarian. They simply want X to follow the same laws that everyone else does. Among those sanctioned is Thierry Breton, a former EU commissioner who helped enforce the EU's Digital Services Act. That's the law that's aimed at reducing illegal and harmful content online. Breton fired back, asking if McCarthy's witch hunt is back and warning Americans that censorship isn't happening where they think it is, and he's right. The Trump regime is censoring our media here in the US and then crying free speech when their criminality is called out. The administration also targeted Imran Ahmed of the Center for Countering Digital Hate, along with leaders of the Global Disinformation Index and Germany's Hate Aid. Those groups say that this isn't about free speech at all, but about silencing critics of Trump, Elon Musk, and far-right disinformation networks. Rubio then went even further, warning that the list could expand and suggesting that some targets could face deportation if they're already in the US. And meanwhile, Trump officials are openly accusing these organizations of being part of what they call a global censorship industrial complex. And this follows VP J.D. Vance's using the Munich Security Conference to attack European speech laws, framing basic content moderation as Soviet-style repression. And most hypocritically, Russian leaders are egging it all on, and they ban platforms like X or Twitter entirely. So while the administration claims that it's defending free speech, it's actually using the power of the US government to punish journalists, researchers, and regulators who challenge disinformation and escalating a direct confrontation with America's closest allies in the process, all to try to come to the rescue of Elon Musk to try to weaken the EU, as was their stated goal in that recent national security strategy document that we reported on just a few weeks ago. And so let this be a reminder to everybody that through all the chaos that DOJ is throwing at us, there are still major stories with massive implications unfolding, and we better stay on top of it all.
The Trump administration sent a letter to European companies demanding that they comply with Trump's executive order banning DEI. And so now we're just seeing a lot of people pissed off. France outright condemned the US, saying American interference in the inclusion policies of French companies as well as unjustified threats of tariffs are unacceptable. The CPME called the US demand an attack on the sovereignty of France. The finance minister said that the values of the new US government are not theirs and that America will be reminded of that. France's equality minister said that French companies aren't going to respond to an ultimatum from another country. The Belgian foreign minister said, let one thing be clear, Belgium will not take a step backwards. The deputy prime minister said, we have a culture of non-discrimination in Europe, and saying we have no lessons to learn from the boss of America. And as tariff day comes, China, Japan, and South Korea will reportedly be jointly responding to US tariffs. With this coming after the three held a meeting discussing closer ties last week, where Japan and in South Korea, they're seeking to import semiconductor materials from China, and in exchange, China is looking to buy chips from them. Right? And notably, for at least the past 2 years, the U.S. has worked on getting its allies to not sell chips to China, and well, they are now because of Trump's tariffs. With the three having also agreed to begin high-level talks on a free trade agreement, which has left many to say that no president in the history of the United States has been as great of a unifier as President Trump, just not inside of his own country. I mean, the three of the countries that we're talking about, they have 3,000 years worth of beef, and now they're finding common ground because of him. I mean, truly, I think there's an argument that no other president could pull this off. But for now, follow to stay in the loop.
Okay, get this. In the name of protecting free speech, the U.S. government just barred 5 Europeans from entering the country explicitly because it disagrees with their speech. On Tuesday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced what the State Department called an action to combat the global censorship industrial complex. And under this policy, the U.S. imposed visa bans on 5 individuals it accuses of pressuring American tech companies to censor U.S. viewpoints online. Those 5 individuals are Thierry Breton, the former European Union commissioner who oversaw digital regulation, Imran Ahmed, the CEO of the Center for Countering Digital Hate.
The things as diverse as the spread of online hatred against Jews, anti-Semitism on social media platforms, and the work that we do protecting children online, looking at the spread of eating disorder and self-harm content.
Claire Melford, co-founder of the Global Disinformation Index, and Anna-Lena von Hodenberg and Josephine Ballen, leaders of the German nonprofit Hate Aid. Rubio described them, though, as radical activists and accused them of orchestrating foreign censorship campaigns against Americans and U.S. companies with claims that the bans are necessary to protect free expression in the United States. And if that sounds contradictory, it is because it is. None of the 5 are accused of hacking platforms, silencing Americans, or forcing companies to take down content. Instead, they're being punished for advocacy, for speech aimed at persuading companies or governments to adopt content moderation policies that the Trump administration opposes. For instance, in August of last year, 2024, Breton sent a threatening letter to Elon Musk, suggesting that a live stream between Elon Musk and then candidate Donald Trump could violate the EU's Digital Services Act. And it was an overreach, and the European Union itself agreed. Its officials condemned Breton's letter, and fellow commissioners distanced themselves from him. As EU free speech experts later noted, the system worked. The abuse of power was rejected, checks and balances functioned. The U.S. response, though, an entire year later, was to ban Breton from entering the country anyway, not because his attempt succeeded, but because he made it. In other words, he's being punished again by a foreign government for speech that was already rejected and sanctioned by his own government. But the legal justification for these bans makes the situation even more surreal. Undersecretary of State Sarah Rogers claimed the 5 Europeans engaged in Murthy-style speech suppression, referencing the Supreme Court case Murthy v. Missouri, because in that case, conservative plaintiffs alleged that the Biden administration coerced social media companies into censoring speech. The Supreme Court rejected those claims 6-3. Writing for the majority, Justice Amy Coney Barrett found no evidence of government coercion, with platform executives testifying that they enforced their own rules. And then Barrett noted that the lower court's finding of censorship was based on a clearly erroneous reading of the evidence. In other words, the State Department is now citing a Supreme Court case that disproved government censorship as proof that government censorship occurred. Not to mention, in the other cases, Imran Ahmed and Claire Melford don't hold government power. Their organizations publish reports and advocate, often controversially, for changes in platform policies. Perhaps it's flawed research or bad speech, but it's still protected speech nonetheless.
Do you have a sense as to why your organization and why you in particular were targeted?
We take on, of course, some of the biggest corporations in America, companies like X, Elon Musk, Meta, and others, and ChatGPT, so OpenAI.
Hate Aid's leaders were sanctioned for being trusted flaggers under the EU's Digital Services Act, a rule that simply allows them to report content to platforms, just like any user can, you or I. Platforms still make the decision on what stays up or comes down. Besides, the Supreme Court has already ruled that this process does not constitute government censorship. France, Germany, the European Union, and the United Kingdom all condemned our bans, with European Commission officials warning of possible retaliation against what they called unjustified measures. French President Emmanuel Macron said Europe would stand firm against pressure. Germany's foreign minister called the bans not acceptable, and EU Council President Antonio Costa described them as unacceptable between allies. Breton responded to the ban saying, "Censorship is not where you think it is," which may be the clearest summary of the moment. The only actual government suppression of speech here is coming from the U.S. government itself, blocking people from entering the country because of their opinions about content moderation while claiming to defend free speech. If the goal were truly to protect free speech, the U.S. would not be using immigration law as a weapon against dissenting ideas, and it certainly would not be doing so while citing a Supreme Court ruling that explicitly rejected the censorship narrative it now claims to be fighting.
But I love the countries of Europe. I love all countries, frankly, all different. But the European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States. I mean, look, let's be honest. The European Union was formed in order to screw the United States. That's the purpose of it. And they've done a good job of it. But now I'm president.
What will happen if these countries where the EU retaliate?
They can't. I mean, they can try.
You know what's wild? The people who scream the loudest about free speech are always the ones to shut it down when they get some power. As you can see, Marco Rubio just banned 5 Europeans from entering the United States. I'm sure you might be wondering, what do? Well, they work on content moderation. They help the European government figure out how to deal with misinformation online. And little Marco here calls that censorship. So what did he do? He used the power of the United States government to ban these 5 people from entering the country. I think that's physical censorship, right? You see, these 5 people write policy recommendations. They're not silencing anyone. They're not banning anyone. They're writing fucking reports. And Rubio decided that their speech is so dangerous that they can't even enter America. And by the way, this is the same guy, Marco Rubio. You know, he lost his mind when Twitter added a fact check label. But when he got a chance to defend free speech, he doesn't give a fuck. He's just gonna, ban free speech. That's the typical Republican for you. We always talk about protecting free speech. But the second they get a little bit of power, they're, bam, we're going to silence you when we don't like you. Typical.
Okay, this is for the Europeans who may be watching me, because Trump just enacted a travel ban for a whole bunch of countries. And he's claiming that the reason for this is to keep us safe and because he doesn't want what's happened to Europe to happen to the United States. I would love to hear from Europeans. If you are watching this and you live in Europe, let me know what country you're in. And if you want to be like the USA, if you would prefer your country to be more like the United States of America, especially in its current state. Just curious. I'm going to hazard a guess that the answers are generally going to be an absolutely the fuck not. But I could be wrong. I know there are weird European MAGA types that would like to live under what we're dealing with over here. I don't believe in any way whatsoever that a travel ban is going to keep us safe. I mean, we're already in danger from the people that live here. I don't think banning people based on what country they're from is going to make a difference. I would love to hear from Europeans, though, if there are any following, any watching. Let me know what you think.
Okay, I'm not surprised. Donald Trump is petty. So I'm not surprised that all it took was speech or an opinion to get them banned. That sounds like him. But 2026 is going to be a trip. I can see it already, y'all. It is going to be a trip. And they got a project 2026, by the way, that they already started on, during the government shutdown, which we could be looking at again in January. Yeah. So Tiki 116, thank you so much for the super sticker and your support from my channel. I deeply appreciate it. Thank you so much. So y'all, I'm going to go ahead and conclude now. I do have some lives coming up that I have lined up already for tomorrow. One is Nicki Minaj. A judge is in the process of ordering her home to be seized. She has a $20 million mansion that's about to be seized. So I'm sure that's not going over well with her. And, we'll see how that plays out. But she owes a judgment that she never paid. And so the judge is talking about taking her mansion. So she is forced to pay on a judgment. And we're also going to get into the daycare fraud that the Somalians have been doing out there in Minnesota. So a lot more is coming out about that daycare fraud. So all they were pretty much doing, y'all, were getting empty buildings and then claiming to the government that there were like 70 children there or 90 children there, and the buildings were pretty much empty. And they were collecting all this money. And what kills me is they act like they're being targeted, they're being discriminated against. What's happening to them is not fair. Y'all committed crimes. Y'all committed crimes. What do you mean not fair? Okay. So, anyway, these people are a trip. So, we will be talking about those two things so far tomorrow. I probably will get some more so that we can go live. So, just be on the lookout for those things. Thank you so much for being here. And we'll do this once again tomorrow. Shalom, family.